It was early morning in a small town where life moved slowly, and everyone seemed to know everyone else. The streets were narrow, and the houses were close together, their walls painted in soft colors that had faded over the years. People walked to work, children played in the dusty yards, and the sound of birds mixed with the faint ringing of a distant bell. Life seemed peaceful on the surface, but beneath that calm, tension had been building for years. The town was divided by old conflicts. Families had rivalries that went back generations, and even small disagreements could quickly turn into arguments. No one remembered why the quarrels had started, only that they continued because it was tradition to mistrust the other side. In the middle of this town lived a man named Armin. He was known for his quiet nature, his kind heart, and his willingness to help anyone in need. He lived alone in a small house at the edge of the town. His life was simple. He worked during the day at a local workshop, fixing tools and helping people with small repairs, and spent his evenings reading or walking through the empty streets. People liked him because he never raised his voice and never took sides in the arguments that often broke out in the market or at community gatherings. He believed in fairness, honesty, and helping others no matter who they were. One morning, as the sun began to rise and cast golden light over the rooftops, Armin was walking along a narrow path behind his house. The air was fresh and the town was quiet except for the soft whispers of leaves moving in the wind. Suddenly, he heard a sound that made him freeze. It was a faint cry, a voice filled with fear and urgency. He turned quickly, listening carefully. The sound came from the small forested area just beyond the edge of the town. Armand's heart began to beat faster. The cries were weak but desperate, as if someone was trapped or in danger. Without thinking twice, he ran toward the sound, careful to avoid the dry branches that snapped under his feet. The closer he got, the louder the cries became, and soon he saw a small figure huddled behind a large tree. It was a little girl, no older than 8 or 9, with dirt on her cheeks and tears streaking down her face. Her eyes were wide with fear, and she trembled as she tried to hide herself. For a moment, Armin paused. He recognized her immediately. She was the daughter of a woman from the other side of the town, a family his community had always considered an enemy. The thought made his mind race. Everyone in the town would call him a traitor if they saw him helping her. They would accuse him of supporting the enemy and could even turn against him. Yet when he looked at her frightened eyes, all those fears disappeared. She was just a child. She had done nothing wrong. She was innocent. Without a second thought, he stepped closer. "It's okay," he whispered gently, keeping his voice soft so no one else would hear. "I'm here to help. You're safe now." The girl looked up, and for the first time, her lips formed a small, uncertain smile. She hesitated, unsure if she could trust him, but there was something in his eyes, a warmth and sincerity that she could not ignore. Slowly, she allowed him to take her hand. Armin led her away from the open area, deeper into the trees where the town could not see them. He moved carefully, keeping her close and watching the surroundings for any sign of danger. As they walked, the girl began to speak, her voice barely audible at first. She explained that she had been outside when the attack happened. Some older boys from a rival part of the town had come looking for trouble, and she had run, not knowing where to go. She was lost and scared, unsure how to get home or if anyone would find her. Armin listened patiently, never interrupting, never judging. He offered her water from a small bottle he carried and some bread from his bag. As she ate, she began to relax slightly, her tears slowing and her breathing becoming steadier. He noticed the small, careful way she looked at him, as if testing whether he was truly a friend or just another danger. "Don't worry," he said softly. "I won't let anything happen to you. You're safe with me." The girl nodded, finally trusting him enough to take his hand without pulling away. Armin thought about what to do next. He knew he couldn't take her back to his house immediately. The town was too dangerous, and if anyone saw them together, questions would be asked and rumors would spread quickly. He needed a safe place somewhere hidden where they could wait until it was safe to think about returning her home. He remembered an old abandoned shed near the edge of the forest. It was small, but it offered shelter from the sun, rain, and anyone who might be searching for her. He led her there, making sure the path was quiet and careful not to leave any trace that they had passed through. When they arrived, he let her sit on a small wooden crate, and he began inspecting the shed to make it as comfortable as possible. He found some old blankets, swept away leaves and dust, and even found a small barrel to serve as a makeshift seat. The girl watched him silently, still unsure but slowly beginning to feel the safety he promised. "Why are you helping me?" she asked quietly. "Aren't you supposed to hate us?" Her question hung in the air. Armin smiled gently, kneeling down so he was at her level. "No," he said simply. "I don't hate anyone. You're just a little girl. You don't deserve fear or harm. I couldn't let anything happen to you." Her eyes shone with gratitude and relief, though she still clutched her small bag tightly. Armin knew the situation was more complicated than it seemed. Helping her could make him an enemy to his own people, but he could not ignore the right thing to do. As he sat beside her, he realized that this small act of courage would change his life forever. He had never faced anything like this, and yet he felt a strange sense of purpose. He would protect her no matter the cost. Hours passed and the sun climbed higher in the sky. Armin and the girl stayed in the shed, talking quietly and sharing stories. He learned her name was Layla, and that she loved to draw and had a small collection of notebooks filled with sketches. She laughed softly when he pretended to draw badly on a scrap piece of paper, and for the first time that day, the fear in her eyes began to fade. Armin knew the danger was far from over. People would start searching for her, and he could not predict what might happen if anyone found them. But he also knew something else. In that small shed, hidden from the world, he had made a choice. A choice to protect life, to follow his heart, and to do what was right. And he knew, deep inside, that he would never regret it. As evening approached, he gathered what little supplies he had brought and prepared to stay with her through the night. The shadows lengthened, and the sounds of the town became distant. In that quiet moment, Armin realized that courage was not always about fighting battles or winning arguments. Sometimes it was about standing between danger and someone who could not defend themselves, even if it meant standing alone. And so, under the soft light of the setting sun, he sat beside Layla, ready to face whatever would come next, determined to protect her at all costs. That one decision, to shield an enemy's child, was the beginning of a story that would change both their lives forever. The morning after the first night in the shed, the town was waking slowly. Birds chirped, roosters crowed, and the faint sounds of people preparing for the day drifted from the streets. Armin had spent a restless night beside Layla, listening to her soft, uneven breathing as she slept. Even though he had stayed awake for most of the night, checking the shed's corners and making sure no one had discovered them, he did not feel tired. Instead, he felt a strange determination. He had promised her safety, and he intended to keep that promise no matter what challenges might come. Layla woke early, rubbing her eyes and blinking in the dim light of the shed. She seemed calmer than the night before, her tears dried and her trembling replaced with quiet curiosity. "Good morning," she whispered, her voice small but steady. Armin smiled, handing her a piece of bread and some water. She ate slowly, still watching him as if measuring whether he was truly trustworthy. "Are you hungry?" he asked softly. "I found some food. Not much, but it will keep you strong." She nodded, and for the first time, she spoke about what had happened the day before. She told him about running through the streets, how scared she was when she saw the older boys approaching, and how she had hidden behind the trees. Her voice trembled slightly, but she spoke bravely, revealing a quiet strength that surprised Armin. As the day progressed, Armin realized that keeping Layla safe was more complicated than simply hiding her. She was a child full of energy, curiosity, and questions. She wanted to explore, she wanted to play, and she wanted to know about the world outside the shed. Armin had to balance her safety with her need for normal childhood experiences. He started, taking her on small walks near the forest, careful to stay out of sight of anyone passing through the town. He taught her how to notice safe paths, how to hide quickly if someone appeared, and how to remain calm in frightening situations. During these walks, they talked about many things. Layla shared stories about her school, her friends, and the small joys of her everyday life. Armin listened carefully, asking gentle questions and sharing small pieces of his own life as well. He told her about his workshop, the simple routines of his days, and his dreams, though few, of a life without fear or conflict. Through these conversations, a bond began to grow between them, a bond that was not just about protection but about trust, understanding, and genuine care. One afternoon, as they rested by a small stream, Layla asked a question that made Armin pause. "Why do people in the town hate my family?" she asked softly. Her voice was filled with confusion and sadness. Armin sighed, looking at the flowing water, its surface reflecting the sunlight in gentle patterns. He thought about how long-standing the rivalries were, how old grudges had passed from one generation to another, and how meaningless hatred could feel when seen through the eyes of a child. "They don't really hate you," he said finally. "They hate what they think your family represents. But you are just Layla. You are innocent. You don't deserve any of this fear or anger." Layla looked at him, her eyes wide and thoughtful. For a moment, she seemed to understand, but then a shadow of doubt crossed her face. "But what if they find me?" she asked quietly. "What if they are angry at you too?" Armin reached out and gently held her small hands. "Then we will face it together," he said. "I will not let anything happen to you. I promise." His words were simple, but they carried weight, and Layla felt comforted. In that moment, she realized that he was not just a protector, he was someone she could trust completely. As days passed, life in the shed became a routine. Armin and Layla settled into a pattern of quiet activities, reading from old books he had, drawing on scraps of paper, and exploring small parts of the forest nearby. Layla began to relax more, laughing softly at Armin's attempts at drawing and sharing small jokes. She showed him her own sketches, which were full of imagination and life, and he marveled at her talent. Each day their bond grew stronger, and Armin found himself thinking about her not just as a child he had to protect, but as a young person who brought light and hope into his life. However, their safety was fragile. Armin knew that rumors would begin to spread soon. People would notice Layla's absence and they would start searching for her. He worried about what might happen if anyone from the town discovered them. The thought of the angry adults, the gossip, and the possible confrontations made his heart beat faster. Yet he refused to show fear in front of Layla. He wanted her to feel secure, to know that she could trust him completely. One evening, as the sun dipped below the horizon, painting the sky in shades of orange and pink, Layla asked another question. "Do you ever get scared?" she asked quietly. Armin smiled faintly, looking at the fading light. "Of course," he admitted. "I get scared sometimes, but fear doesn't mean you stop. It means you think carefully, plan carefully, and still do what is right." Layla nodded, absorbing his words. She realized that courage was not the absence of fear, but the choice to act despite it. That night, as they sat together in the shed, Armin thought about the future. He knew that keeping Layla hidden indefinitely was impossible. Eventually, she would need to return to her family. But he also knew that her safety had to come first. He began making plans. Safe paths to the town, hiding places, and ways to communicate secretly if needed. He wanted to be ready for anything, because he understood that the world outside the shed could be dangerous, unforgiving, and unfair. Despite the challenges, there were moments of simple joy. Armin and Layla discovered a small patch of wildflowers near the forest, and she insisted on picking some to take back to the shed. They watched the sunset together, feeling the quiet beauty of the world around them. Layla laughed as she tried to teach Armin how to balance on a fallen log, and he laughed too, enjoying the rare, carefree moments. These small joys reminded them both why it was worth protecting life, even when the risks were great. As the week passed, Armin noticed that Layla was beginning to trust him completely. She no longer flinched when he moved suddenly, and she spoke freely about her thoughts and feelings. She even began to share small dreams about the future, a school she wanted to attend, friends she missed, and adventures she hoped to have. Armand realized that his role was not just to protect her physically, but also to nurture her spirit, to give her hope, and to remind her that kindness and courage existed in a world often filled with fear. By the end of the week, the bond between them had grown strong, almost like family. Layla had begun to see Armin as a guardian, a mentor, and a friend. And Armin, in turn, had begun to see Layla not just as a child he needed to protect, but as a reminder of what was truly important in life: compassion, courage, and the power of doing what is right, no matter the cost. And so, in that quiet shed at the edge of the forest, the story of trust and courage continued to unfold. Armand had taken the first step into a path that would test him in ways he could never imagine. But with every passing day, he became more certain of one thing: he would do everything in his power to protect Layla, to guide her safely, and to show that love and humanity could rise above fear and hatred. One bright morning, while Armin and Layla were walking along the familiar forest path, a sudden sense of tension filled the air. Armin had noticed it before: an unusual stillness, the silence that felt heavier than normal. Birds had stopped singing, and even the wind seemed to pause. He slowed down, scanning the trees and paths carefully. Layla, sensing his unease, clutched his hand. Her small fingers trembled slightly, and she whispered, "What is it?" Armin shook his head, trying not to worry her. "I'm not sure," he said gently, "but we need to be careful." They continued walking slowly, keeping to the shadows and avoiding open areas. As they reached a small clearing, Armin froze. Standing there, with a mixture of anger, relief, and determination on her face, was Layla's mother. Her eyes were wide and searching, her hands clutched tightly around a small scarf Layla had left at home. Layla gasped softly, running toward her mother, but Armin stepped forward quickly. He had expected that sooner or later someone would come looking for her. He had thought about it every day, planning for this moment, but nothing could have prepared him for the sight of her mother standing there, looking both frightened and determined. The mother knelt down as Layla reached her, gathering her into her arms with a strength that came from fear and love. "Layla," she whispered, her voice trembling. "I was so worried. Where have you been? Are you safe?" Layla nodded quickly, burying her face into her mother's chest. Armin felt a pang in his chest. He had protected her, fed her, and cared for her every day, and yet now he faced a new challenge: the mother's anger and fear directed at him. "Who is this man?" the mother asked, looking at Armin with sharp eyes. Her voice was firm, almost accusing, though there was an underlying note of worry. Layla pulled back slightly, pointing to him. He kept me safe," she said softly. "He helped me." Armin stepped forward slowly, hands raised to show he meant no harm. "Ma'am," he said gently, "I only wanted to protect Layla. She was in danger, and I couldn't leave her alone. That is all I have done." The mother's eyes softened for a brief moment as she looked at her daughter, who now seemed calmer and unharmed. Relief flickered across her face, but it was quickly replaced by suspicion. "Why should I trust you?" she asked. "How do I know you didn't take her for some reason, or that you don't plan to harm her?" Armin swallowed hard, feeling the weight of her doubt. He understood it completely. In a town divided by long-standing conflicts, trust did not come easily. He spoke with sincerity, his voice calm but firm. "I have no reason to harm her," he said. "I do not hate your family, and I never have. I only wanted to make sure she was safe. Please believe me." The mother studied him carefully. She could see the truth in his eyes, but her heart was torn. On one hand, she was relieved to see her daughter unharmed. On the other, she was angry that a man from the other side had kept her hidden without telling her. Her mind raced with questions, doubts, and fears. Layla noticed her mother's hesitation and tugged gently at her sleeve. "Mother, he really helped me," she said quietly. The mother knelt down again, looking directly at Armin. "You did this to protect her?" she asked. Her voice was softer now, but still cautious. Armin nodded. "Yes," he said simply. "I couldn't let her get hurt. I knew it might make others angry, but I had to do what was right." For a long moment, the forest seemed to hold its breath. The mother looked at her daughter, then back at Armin. She saw the exhaustion in his eyes, the care with which he had treated her child, and the honesty in his voice. Slowly, the tension between them began to ease, but it did not disappear. She was grateful, yes, but she was also wary. "You will not leave until I know she is safe," she said firmly. Armin nodded, understanding her concern. "I will stay as long as needed," he said. "Her safety is my responsibility until you are sure she is protected." The mother's expression softened slightly. She reached out and took Layla's hand, holding her close. Layla looked at Armin, her eyes filled with trust and gratitude. "Thank you," she whispered softly. "Thank you for keeping me safe." Armin nodded, feeling a warmth in his heart despite the tension. He had done what was right, and Layla's words reminded him why it had been worth it. Over the next few hours, the mother observed Armin closely. She asked questions about where he had taken Layla, what he had done to protect her, and how he had managed to keep her safe. Armin answered honestly, without exaggeration or embellishment. He wanted her to see that his intentions had been pure, and that every action he had taken had been for the child's well-being. As they spoke, Layla quietly wandered to a nearby patch of flowers. She picked a few, arranging them in a small, careful bundle. She handed them to Armin with a shy smile. "For you," she said softly. "Thank you." Armin accepted them with a gentle smile, feeling a mix of pride and relief. He realized that his bond with Layla was no longer just about protection. It was about trust, care, and understanding. The mother, watching this small exchange, felt her own emotions shifting. She had entered the forest full of anger, fear, and suspicion, ready to confront the man who had hidden her daughter. But now she saw something different, a man who had acted out of kindness, who had put himself at risk for the sake of her child. She could not deny the truth any longer. Yet despite this realization, she was cautious. "We need to go home soon," she said finally. "It's not safe for any of us to stay here too long, but I will not let you leave until I am certain she is truly safe." Armin nodded again. He understood her need for control and her protective instincts. "I understand," he said. "I will do whatever you need." The rest of the day passed slowly, filled with careful conversation, observation, and small acts of trust. Armin showed her how he had prepared the shed, how he had kept Layla fed and safe, and how he had avoided any danger from the town. The mother listened intently, asking questions, clarifying doubts, and gradually allowing herself to believe in his honesty. Layla, meanwhile, stayed close to both of them, feeling the security of having both her mother and her protector nearby. As evening approached, the mother finally allowed a small smile to appear. She reached out and touched Armin's shoulder gently. "I cannot fully trust you yet," she said quietly. "But I see now that your heart was in the right place. You have done what many would not do. You have protected my daughter when she needed it most." Armin felt a wave of relief and gratitude. He knew this was only the beginning, that trust would take time, but it was a step forward, a step toward understanding, peace, and cooperation. That night, as they walked back toward the edge of the town, Armin and the mother walked side by side, with Layla safely between them. The forest had returned to its quiet rhythm, and the air seemed lighter. The first real step toward resolution had been taken, but Armin knew that challenges were still ahead. There would be doubts, fears, and perhaps even anger from others in the town. Yet in that moment he felt a quiet hope. He had acted with courage and kindness, and for the first time he saw that even the deepest divisions could begin to heal through understanding and compassion. Days turned into weeks, and life around the small town continued as usual, though the tension between the two sides remained. Arman now faced a new challenge. While Layla's mother had come to trust him to some extent, the townspeople were still suspicious. Rumors began circulating about her disappearance and about the man who had kept her hidden. Whispers followed him wherever he went, and some people even crossed the street to avoid him. Yet, Arman knew he could not turn back. His promise to protect Layla had changed his life, and he intended to keep it. Every morning he would prepare food for Layla and make sure she was safe before the mother joined them in their small routines. The mother stayed close during the day, learning more about Arman, observing his actions and slowly seeing the sincerity in his behavior. She was cautious but grateful. Still, she could not ignore the fear that others might confront them or that her daughter might be in danger again. Layla, meanwhile, had started to flourish under Arman's care. She was learning new things about the forest, drawing pictures of her surroundings, and even helping Arman prepare small meals. She had begun to trust both the man who had saved her and her mother. Though she could sense the tension between the two adults at times, she understood that they had different ways of showing care, and she tried her best to bring them together with her innocent questions and gentle observations. One afternoon, as the three sat near the small stream, the mother spoke carefully, choosing her words. "Arman," she said softly, "I see that you care for my daughter. I can see it in your actions. But you must understand, I cannot fully let my guard down yet. People in the town will judge, and I need to protect her. No matter what." Arman nodded, understanding her position completely. "I know," he replied gently. "I never expected trust to come quickly. I only hope that over time my actions will show you that my intentions are true. I will do everything I can to ensure her safety." Over the next few days, the mother began to test him in small ways. She would ask him to take Layla on errands through the forest or to show how he kept her safe during their walks. Arman complied willingly, never hiding anything. He was transparent in all his actions, knowing that the mother's trust was essential not only for Layla's safety, but also for the peace of mind that she carried with her. Despite the careful routines, life outside their hidden corner of the world began to creep closer. People in the town noticed Layla's absence, and the rumors grew louder. Arman could hear whispers in the marketplace, see curious eyes following him as he walked to his workshop, and notice suspicion in the small gestures of neighbors who once greeted him warmly. Each time he reminded himself that his focus was on Layla, not the judgment of others. He had to be patient, calm, and unwavering. One day, Layla fell ill. A sudden fever and chills made her weak and frightened. Arman and her mother worked together to care for her. Arman prepared warm drinks, washed cloths to cool her forehead, and stayed awake through the night, monitoring her breathing and temperature. Her mother, seeing his devotion, began to feel her fear slowly replaced with gratitude. She had always worried for her daughter, but now she saw someone else share that concern, not as an enemy but as a protector. During those long hours, the three of them grew closer. The mother started to ask Arman questions about his childhood, his family, and why he chose to help her daughter. His answers were honest and heartfelt. He spoke of his belief that every child deserved safety, love, and care, and that fear or prejudice should never guide actions when it came to protecting the innocent. The mother listened carefully, nodding at times and smiling faintly at his words. As Layla began to recover, the mother realized that she had been too rigid in her expectations. She had expected fear, doubt, and perhaps even deception from Arman, but she had found none. Instead, she found patience, courage, and kindness, qualities that she had almost forgotten existed in a world so focused on rivalry and suspicion. She began to lower her guard, allowing herself to see the man not as a representative of the enemy but as an ally, a partner in caring for her child. However, the town's judgment was not far away. One evening, a neighbor came to speak with the mother, questioning why her daughter had been gone for so long and what Armin had been doing with her. The mother stood firm, calmly explaining that Layla had been in danger and that Armin had protected her. Some neighbors were skeptical, while others were surprised at her confidence and trust in him. The mother realized that she had to make a choice: continue to defend the man she had begun to trust or let fear dictate her decisions. She chose the former, knowing that doing what was right mattered more than the opinions of the town. During this time, Layla noticed small changes in her mother. She saw the fear in her eyes gradually replaced by trust, and the tension in her voice soften when speaking about Armin. Layla felt happy, knowing that her mother and her protector were beginning to understand each other. She smiled often, played freely, and even joked with both of them, bridging the gap between the cautious mother and the dedicated man. One day, as they sat together watching the sun dip below the horizon, the mother spoke quietly. "Armin, I want to thank you," she said. "I was angry, I was scared, and I didn't know if I could trust you. But you have shown me that your heart is pure, that you care for Layla more than I could have imagined. I still worry about the town, about what others might say, but I can see that you are not our enemy." Armin smiled softly, feeling a sense of relief. "Thank you," he replied. "That means a lot. I only want what is best for Layla, and I am glad that you understand that. We will face the rest together, as a team." The three of them had formed a delicate balance: Layla's safety, her mother's trust, and Armin's courage intertwined in a way that created a quiet harmony. It was not perfect, and there were still dangers and doubts, but the foundation of understanding and cooperation had been laid over time. Small gestures of kindness and cooperation strengthened the bond further. Armin helped with chores, taught Layla small skills, and even shared stories from his childhood that made the mother laugh. The mother, in turn, began to rely on his presence, appreciating his careful guidance and dedication. The small shed by the forest had transformed from a place of hiding into a space of learning, trust, and shared care. Despite the ongoing challenges, Armin knew that this was the right path. He had acted with courage, and though the road ahead would not be easy, he felt a quiet strength within himself. Layla was safe, her mother was learning to trust, and together, they were beginning to show that understanding could overcome fear. And in that quiet, peaceful forest, the small family, formed by trust, courage, and compassion, began to grow stronger each day. The following weeks were a time of quiet transformation. The mother, Layla, and Armin had settled into a new rhythm, one built on trust and cooperation. Layla was happier than ever, playing freely, laughing often, and sharing her thoughts and dreams with both adults. Her health and spirit had improved, and she seemed to glow with the sense of safety that Armin and her mother provided together. The mother had grown more comfortable with Armin's presence. She saw his dedication, his patience, and his unwavering commitment to Layla's well-being. She began to appreciate his quiet strength and his calm way of handling challenges. Though she still felt cautious about the town's judgment, she had realized that her daughter's happiness and safety were far more important than rumors or suspicion. Armin, too, had changed. The responsibility of protecting Layla and earning her mother's trust had shaped him in ways he had never imagined. He had learned patience, empathy, and the quiet courage that comes from acting selflessly. He realized that bravery was not only about facing danger, but also about staying steadfast in one's convictions, even when misunderstood. One day, the mother decided it was time for them to return to the town together. She wanted to show the people that Armin had acted with good intentions and that Layla was safe. Though there were fears of confrontation, she felt a sense of courage that came from seeing the truth in his actions. Armin supported her fully, helping Layla walk safely and preparing for any challenges that might arise. As they entered the town, whispers and curious glances followed them. People noticed Layla with both her mother and Armin and began asking questions. The mother spoke confidently, explaining how Armin had saved her daughter and cared for her in the days she had been missing. She emphasized his honesty, courage, and dedication, and gradually, skepticism turned into understanding. Some people nodded quietly, while others expressed gratitude. Slowly, the community began to see Arman not as an enemy, but as a protector who had acted with kindness and courage. Layla's friends welcomed her back warmly, and her laughter echoed through the streets once more. The mother observed her daughter's joy and felt a deep sense of relief and gratitude. She looked at Arman, silently acknowledging the bond that had formed between him and her child, and she knew that she could fully trust him now. In the days that followed, the town's tension began to ease. Arman's actions had shown that kindness and courage could rise above old rivalries. People began to treat him with respect, and whispers of judgment slowly faded. Though the divisions in the town would not disappear overnight, the story of one man's selfless act of protection had sown the seeds of understanding and reconciliation. Layla, now safe with her mother, still spent time with Arman. They shared stories, laughter, and small adventures in the forest. Their bond remained strong, a reminder that trust and courage could create connections that transcended fear and prejudice. The mother, too, continued to observe and learn from Arman's example, appreciating the way he had taught patience, empathy, and the importance of doing what is right. In the end, Arman walked through the town with a quiet sense of fulfillment. He had faced danger, suspicion, and the challenge of mistrust, yet he had remained steadfast. He had protected an innocent child, earned the trust of her mother, and in doing so, reminded the town that compassion and courage could overcome fear. The dear story of Layla, her mother, and Arman became a symbol in the town. It showed that even in a world divided by old rivalries, understanding and selfless action could build bridges where none seemed possible. The bond they had formed, tested by fear and strengthened by trust, became a lasting reminder of the power of kindness, bravery, and love. And as Arman watched Layla play with her friends, laughter spilling into the warm sunlight, he knew that the journey had changed them all. It had taught him that courage could take many forms, that trust could grow in unexpected places, and that protecting what is good and innocent in the world is always worth every risk. In the quiet moments, as the town settled into evening, Arman reflected on the path he had walked. From the first moment he had shielded a frightened child to the day her mother fully trusted him, he had learned the true meaning of bravery, compassion, and humanity. And he knew that no matter what challenges lay ahead, the lessons of trust, love, and courage would guide him always.